Stat of the game. Andy Dalton has thrown 30 or fewer passes in 4 straight games. In those games,
Well, there's a reason.
Yeah,
Taysom Hill's a thing.
He is. And they've given up 0, 27, 20, and 20 points in those 4 games. So hopefully the Niners can put up some more points, and Andy Dalton will be forced to throw a little bit more, so I don't have to complain about Chris Olave all the time. But you ranked the wide receivers. You said Olave would be number 1 in full PPR, and Debo would be number 1 in non-PPR. We can stay on that for a little bit. Chris Olave, or what if Leonard Fournette's out? Would you start Rachaad White or Chris Olave?
I probably would start Rachaad White just because I think he could be 100 and a touchdown. He had 100 yards after Fournette left against Seattle, and that was a half of sharing with Fournette.
I just think this is a really interesting matchup. I don't know what to make of the 49ers. They are not as good in the secondary since they lost Mosley. They are giving up more big plays now than they did in the first half of the year, but they're still a very good team with a great front. They could really put a lot of pressure on Dalton. So, I mean, I guess your overall expectations for the Saints. And that brings us to Kamara, too, because Kamara's got 3 really disappointing games in a row. Those were probably his toughest matchups of the season. They were Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and the Rams. And this one's much tougher. The Niners are incredible against the run. So, yeah, how much confidence do we have in Olave and Kamara?
I think you're starting Olave until he has a stretch of games where he's disappointed you, and he certainly has not had that yet. So,
has he not? Because I would argue that he did.
A stretch of games that disappointed fantasy-wise. He had 1 game with 10 points recently, and that was it.
Okay, am I missing something? Because I'm seeing 10.2, 13.1, and 7.0. Did I make a typo
Maybe
here?
2 games?
3 in a row.
The 13-point game I would not say is disappointing.
Well, 10.2, 13.1, and 7 fantasy points in 3 straight games. That's not a guy I have a ton of confidence in.
And then what do you have last week?
21.2.
He has that potential every week.
He does. All right.
When I say stretch of games, it would have been probably 3 in a row with 10 or less.
Okay. All right. That's terrible. What about Kamara?
It's kind of, Dalvin Cook going into this week, I didn't have a lot of faith, but you're starting him. Saquon Barkley, I didn't have a lot of faith, but you're starting him. Kamara's the same way. You got to hope that he gets in the end zone. You got to hope that he's more involved in the passing game. That's been the more frustrating thing is the lack of catches. So hopefully Dalton goes back to doing that a little bit more because the pass rush and the pressure that he's going to be under. So again, he's not ranked as a top 12 running back for me. He's closer to 20. He's, I think 15 or 16. But I'm not benching Alvin Kamara. I just traded for Alvin Kamara. I traded Debo Samuel for Alvin Kamara. So
yes, you did. If I could say, all right, Jamie, you can have the 10.6 half PPR fantasy points that Jamal Williams scored yesterday against the Bills, or what's in the box with Alvin Kamara in half PPR. You take the box? Okay. Yeah. Would you start?
I didn't draft Alvin Kamara to get me 10.6.
Would you start Kamara or Connor?
Connor.
Yeah, great match.
Like I'll give you some examples. Like I would have started Ramondre Stevenson over him. I did that. I would have started Tony Pollard over him. I did that. I would have started Jeff Wilson over him.
Okay. Or how about the tight ends, Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill?
I have no interest in Taysom Hill. Juwan Johnson is a touchdown or bust guy who scored in 4 of his last 5 games. The 49ers are amazing against tight ends, but the way that I'm kind of approaching tight end at this point, if I don't have a guy that I'm extremely confident in, and by that I mean Kelsey, Andrews, Schultz, Hawkinson. Who am I missing? There's one more guy.
Who'd you say? Andrews, Kelsey, Schultz, Hawkinson.
Yeah.
Not Goddard. Freiermuth.
There it is. Those 5 guys. The rest, I think, is just who's playing well of late. And so I'll probably still start Kmet because he's playing well of late. I'll still start Juwan Johnson because he's playing well of late. I'll take a chance on Austin Hooper in a deeper league because he's playing well of late. It's such a terrible position.
How about Garoppolo? How do you feel about Garoppolo this week?
I don't want to say, again, similar to, I forget who you asked about before. Oh, Gibson. Must start guy, but it's hard to get away from him. I mean, coming off a 4 touchdown game, He should have had a stretch. This should be 6 games in a row of 20 or more fantasy points that Brandon Ayuk had scored 2 games ago for them when he dropped a touchdown and he only had the rushing score. So he's playing well. His weapons are incredible. This is a matchup I think you can exploit, especially if the pass rush is not there with Cam Jordan and Davenport. So we'll see what happens there. But I think even those guys play, you're still starting Garoppolo based on how he's looked right now. I think they're the best team in the NFC. And that's saying a lot because Philadelphia has been fantastic. The Cowboys look really good. But I think, you just look at what San Francisco has. If they throw everything at you and play their best game, I think it's better than anybody else's best game in that conference.
So Garoppolo or Brady?
Garoppolo. You got to keep an eye on the weather in Cleveland too.
Garoppolo or Lamar Jackson?
Lamar.
Garoppolo or Derek Carr?
Garoppolo.
By the way, they looked into the numbers on Jimmy Garoppolo because he is the top 10 quarterback. He's number 10 per game. And that's really high for him. He's having a good year, but he's not doing the one thing to me that he's doing differently. If you look at just the numbers, the yards per attempt, the attempts per game, the completion percentage, the one thing that really jumps out, the touchdown percentage, it's the interception rate. He has really cut down on his turnovers, and that has been the biggest difference for Garoppolo this year. Of course, he has incredible weapons, but statistically, if you just look at the stat sheet, the thing that you circle and say, wow, that's different, is the interception rate for him.
It's going to be fascinating what happens if they make a strong playoff run, what they do.
I know. It's the running backs. McCaffrey, yes. Elijah Mitchell, he has 27 carries in his last 2 games compared to 21 for Christian McCaffrey. Starter sit, Elijah Mitchell.
Again, desperate situation, non-PPR leagues. Can he get you 8 points like he did a week ago? I think that's probably fair, knowing that if they're playing with the lead, he seems to be their 4th quarter guy. So I don't want to trust Elijah Mitchell with Christian McCaffrey healthy, but desperate times, he's not horrible.
If Mostert plays, would you start Mostert or Mitchell?
Mostert.
Would you start if both Bucs running backs played, would you start Fournette or Mitchell?
Fournette.
How about you don't like Deontay Foreman or Elijah Mitchell?
Foreman.
All right. And Debo and Ayuk.
He's not going to catch the ball and he needs to score. And he just, 27 carries. He hasn't done that yet.
Isn't that Foreman? Not going to catch the ball and needs to
score.
But
you say 27 carries. It was 18 and 9. I don't think the 18 is sustainable. 9 is more realistic.
I was really just saying the 27 carries to illustrate that he actually had 6 more than McCaffrey.
I understand why you did it. But I think if you're just breaking it down, he's probably closer to 9 carries than he is to 18. And I think Foreman, if things go right for him, he's 15 plus carries.
Okay. Debo and Ayuk are number 2 wide receivers. You like the Seahawks receivers or the Niners receivers better?
The Seahawks receivers. I think that's just more sustainable production for those 2 guys.
Start George Kittle. He is top 6 in both formats, but this is a tough matchup.
I would put Kittle in that category too, of guys I feel comfortable with.
But there's a lot of downside, and he's got this tough matchup. So
I guess the point would be is like, aside from that group,
yeah,
you can replace those other guys. You're not replacing Kittle. You're not benching Kittle.
Bench him for Freiermuth?
If you have that scenario, yes.
All right. I knew that game was going to take a while. Let's go to Green Bay at Philadelphia. Green Bay at Philadelphia. Here's the stat of the game that I don't think anyone's going to care about. But if it happens, if this trend holds up, it would be a bad thing. So the Eagles allow the 4th fewest receiving yards per game to running backs. Aaron Jones has already faced 5 teams that are top 7 in that stat. Okay, he's faced a lot of teams that are really good against pass-catching running backs. And in those 5 games, Aaron Jones had a huge game against Washington, 9 catches, 53 yards, and 2 touchdowns. In the other 4 games, he had no more than 20 receiving yards. So this, in that regard, as a receiver, is a tough matchup for Aaron Jones, and he has not done well in 4 of 5 tough matchups against pass-catching running backs. Is he still a confident start for you? I mean, is he like Kamara and Cook, where you have to start them by default, or is Aaron Jones a guy that you're actually excited to start?
He's closer. I would say he's more like Barkley than he is to Kamara and Cook, because I think that the thing that you would hope for the Packers is While the Eagles are trying to address their run defense, I still think that's the weakness of their defense. And so, how do you make things better for a guy with a broken thumb against a good secondary? Well, you run the ball. So that would be my game plan. I don't know what Matt LaFleur's thinking. So, try and establish Aaron Jones on the ground and see if you can make some production there. But they're just offense is just so weird all season. The last 2 weeks they look better, but they've been better at home than they have been on the road, and then they're back on the road again. So I don't know. I'm starting Aaron Jones
or Miles Sanders.
I start Aaron Jones over Miles Sanders because at least there's a role in the passing game, whether it's good or bad. He's going to get catches. Miles Sanders has 1 catch in his last billion games. It's just not good. Now I do think Sanders is a decent play this week, because they should have a lead. This is a run defense that I think is not very good. And hopefully they realize, I read a story where I think it was the Philly Inquirer, that what happened to them last week was their offense was just so disjointed, and they went back to running the ball. Now, it wasn't all Sanders. It was Boston Scott. It was also Jalen Hurts. But that was their formula for success last year. And just the comments after the game where, we simplified things. We went back to our roots, so I don't know. That could be something that they piggyback off and get back to giving Miles Sanders the ball a little bit more. And again, if they have a lead, that he gets the opportunity to, get some of those carries. So I think Sanders finds the end zone. I think he, gets 80+ yards on the ground.
Well,
maybe a catch or two. Huh?
That's a big game. 80 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, for him, certainly.
He is pretty touchdown dependent. I mean, let's be real. I think he has 2 catches in his last 5 games. It's crazy. I love AJ Dillon this week, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't even fall for that. I thought you were going to be like, you do? And I was like, no, heck no. I do not love AJ Dillon this week. Sit him. Okay. How about,
not to use the word bust, just disappointments.
Oh, huge bust. Huge bust. And what the worst part is? I can't even drop him because he's a handcuff. He's a high-end handcuff. He and Kareem Hunt. It's like those guys absolutely stink. They should go nowhere near your lineup.
And Madison,
at least you took a lot later than Dillon,
Yeah.
And later than Hunt.
I was talking about dropping them.
What's that?
It's like you can't drop those guys.
I know. It's so frustrating. And you knew what you were getting into with Madison, but the other two, man, I'd be so mad. Like, it took me a long time to drop Samaje Perine, and now I hate myself for it. If I did that with Dillon and Hunt, I'd hate myself even more. All right, so Aaron
I had
Rodgers,
to drop Madison in one league this past week, and there was one point where Dalvin Cook got up slowly. I was like, oh, here it is.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers has faced 4 teams that are currently top 10 against quarterbacks. Actually, I don't know if that's still the case with the Giants after last night's game, but they were going into the game. And he scored 19 to 21 points in 3 of those 4 games, which is what he's done in like all but 3 games this year. So that was the Patriots, the Giants, and the Bills. He scored 13.8 points against the Jets. That was a bad game and a tough matchup. The Eagles are tougher. They're giving up the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. So where do you have Rodgers this week? And do you think he can get you the 19 or more points that he's gotten almost every week? I think it's 7 out of 10, or 8 out of 11 rather. Yeah. And if he does, that would be the most points that anyone scored against the Eagles all year.
I think 18 points is probably where you're looking at. I wonder if they lose this game, maybe one more, does he shut it down? Playing with a broken thumb.
I don't think so. But
if they're out of playoff contention?
Well, first of all, it's very hard to be out of playoff contention in the NFC. If you're under 500, you're in playoff contention. So I don't think they're there yet.
They're 4-7?
Yes.
Or 4-6?
No, they haven't had their bye.
So they're 4-7.
Yeah, like Washington is the first team out, and Washington's 5-6 or something like that.
Yeah, Washington's basically playing an elimination game in a lot of ways this week.
Washington can't be 5-6. They've had their byes.
No, they're above 500. They're 6-5. 6-4.
4? Washington is 6-5. Okay. They haven't had their bye then. Am I crazy?
They have not had their bye.
Okay. Green Bay's 4. Well, whatever. That's a conversation for another show. Rodgers is...
I'm not starting Rodgers if I don't have to.
Okay. Packers running backs we talked about. Packers wide receivers. All right, how about ranking the wide receivers in this game? I assume that A.J. Brown is number 1. Who would you go
Brown
with?
1, Smith 2, Lazard 3, Watson 4.
Devontae Smith or a 49ers wide receiver?
The 49ers guys.
I mean, this isn't. How do you feel about Smith and honestly Brown? Like Brown has been great. He's number 14 per game. Devontae Smith is number 31 per game in PPR, but yardage is an issue for both of these guys. There's not a lot of targets to go around here. So talk to me about the Eagles wide receivers.
Yeah, Brown, I think, will make amends for his bad game in the fumble last week. I think he's, a very much a primetime type of player, much like Justin Jefferson. Jefferson talked about that. I think Brown will probably relish that opportunity as well. Smith, I think, is, he's had a very roller coaster type of season. I think he's benefited the last 2 games without Goddard being there, so maybe he's gotten a slight boost. I don't know if it's necessarily reflected in targets, but just in big plays or, scoring plays, opportunity plays. So, I think low end number 2, high end number 3 receiver for Smith, kind of basically where their season is their numbers are for the season, 15 and 31.
All right. Sit the tight ends. And the Eagles DST, not as high as I thought they'd be. They are 13th for you and 13th for Heath, 7th for Dave. That's interesting.
They haven't been good the last couple weeks.
Were they not good last week? They were not good the week before against Washington. They were good last week. They had 4. You know what? They got a lot of sacks. They have 16 sacks in their last 4 games.
Yeah, but getting
you know what? The Packers have not been a good matchup since Christian Watson
the reason. But getting 4 sacks against Matt Ryan is like
something,
making a joke against you. It's just an easy thing to do.
Let's see if they can keep it up. All right, don't drop the Eagles, but they're not as high as they normally would be, the DST.